Welcome back, SurfNav. This is still Walt, a SurfNav instructor, and we're going to continue on with our ETA problem from our outbox off the coast of Hawaii to Vladivostok. In our last video, we converted our departure zone time into GMT and found that we will leave our outbox at 22:30 GMT on 11 November 2023. For this next video, we're going to be doing our time, speed, distance calculations to figure out how long it's going to take us to transit from our outbox to Vladivostok. So in the last video, we took our departure time and we converted it into Zulu. For this video, now we're going to take our distance of 3,725 nautical miles. We're going to divide it by 18 knots. This is going to tell us how many hours it's going to take to transit 3,725 nautical miles if we're going 18 knots. Alright, so in the last video, we determined that we will depart our outbox at 22:30 GMT on 11 November 2023. We need to find out what time we're going to arrive in Vladivostok, Russia. Other given information is our SOA, or speed of advance, which is 18.0 knots. And our last piece of given information is our distance between our outbox and Vladivostok of 3,725 nautical miles. Now that we've laid out all of our given information, we can take a look at our time, speed, distance triangle, figure out what we're going to multiply and what we're going to divide. So here is our time, speed, distance triangle. We're going to set it up so that distance is always on top. Speed and time will always be on the bottom. You need to make sure that distance is always on top so that you do the math the right way. One way to remember is D street. D is always on top. Another sports analogy is, if you're a football fan, what wins championships? Defense and special teams. So for this example, we already know our distance. That's 3,725 nautical miles. We also know our speed, which is 18.0 knots. We use the triangle to tell us that if we have distance and speed and we're looking for time, we're going to take distance and divide it by our speed, and that will equal the time. So here's what our formula comes out to be. Distance divided by speed equals time. Make sure you write that down somewhere. There are many different ways to do an ETA problem. As you saw from our earlier video, we decided that our first step was going to be to take our departure time and convert it into GMT, which we did. The next step would be to calculate the time, speed, distance based off of our speed and the distance that we need to go. That's the second step. The third step would be to take this transit time, add it to the time of departure in GMT to figure out what time we'll arrive in Vladivostok in GMT. And then the last step will be to convert the GMT of arrival in Vladivostok to the zone time that Vladivostok keeps. There are different ways and different orders that you can do those steps in, as long as you show your work and get the right answer. So let's figure out that transit time. First, we need our distance, which is 3,725 nautical miles. We'll also write down our SOA, which is 18.0 knots. And we are looking for the time. We are going to calculate that right now. We already know that for our time, speed, distance formula, we're going to do distance divided by speed, and that's going to equal the time. So here we go. We'll take our distance of 3,725 nautical miles, and we'll divide it by our speed of 18 knots. Now, before we do that, let's take a look at our units. So these knots, we're actually going to erase those, and we're going to replace it with nautical miles per hour. 1 knot is 1 nautical mile per hour, so they're the same thing. What we're going to see, though, is a little later, we're going to see how these affect our units as we're doing the math. So now in our calculators, let's do 3,725 nautical miles, and we'll divide it by 18 knots. And we get 206.9444 Now let's take a look at these units. So we took nautical miles and divided by nautical miles per hour, which means that if you divide something by itself, they cancel out. So nautical miles cancel out with nautical miles, and we're left with hours. So the units for this are hours. So this tells us that if we transit 3,725 nautical miles, and we do it at 18 knots or 18 nautical miles per hour, then it's going to take us 206.9444 hours to do that. A quick note about rounding. Here at SurfNav, we recommend that you don't round until the very end of the problem. There's a few steps involved in an ETA problem, so if you round at every step, you might round yourself out of tolerance. So we're just going to leave these digits here. In fact, the easier way to do it is just leave this entire number, 206.944444, in your calculator. Don't erase it, because we're going to need it for the next step anyways. If you do decide to round, though, I would not round any more than 2 decimal places. I would leave at least 2 decimal places there. For our next step, we're going to take this number, 206.944 hours, and we're going to convert it into a more usable format. We're going to convert it into days, hours, and minutes. Because you're not going to tell your CO, hey, it's going to take us 206.9444 hours to get from our outbox to Vladivostok. No. So let's do that. We just calculated that it would take us 206.9444 hours of transit time. What we're looking for is we need to get that into days, hours, and minutes. So let's start by dividing this by 24, because there are 24 hours in a day. Now the good news is we left this number in our calculator with all the decimal places, so we'll just divide that by 24 hours, and we get 8.6226. Now looking at the units, we have hours, hours, and days. Since we're dividing hours by hours, those cancel out, and we're left with just days. So this is 8.6226 days. So since it's going to take us more than 8 days, we're going to take the whole number, the 8, and move it over here. So in our calculators, we have this number, 8.6226 days. We're going to leave it in our calculator and just subtract 8, so we're left with just 0.6226 days. We need to convert that back into hours, so we'll multiply that by 24, because there are 24 hours in one day, and we get 14.9444. Looking at the units, up here days cancel out, we're left with just hours, so that's 14.9444 hours. Let's take that whole number of 14 hours, we're going to move it over here to save it, and now, since this number is still in our calculator, what we'll do is we'll subtract 14 from it, so we're left with just 0.9444 hours, which we need to convert into minutes. We'll do that by multiplying that by 60, because there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, and we get 56.7. Looking at the units, hours cancel out, we're left with just minutes, so that's 56.7 minutes. And that's the last piece of information. So we'll move it over here. So we found out that if we transit 3,725 nautical miles, which is the distance between our outbox and Vladivostok, and we do that at the ISIC approved SOA of 18 knots, it will take us 8 days, 14 hours, and 56.7 minutes to get there, which is the same amount of time as this 206.9444 hours. The good thing about converting our hours into days, hours, and minutes is it's going to make the math much easier as we take that transit time and add it to our departure time. So there we go. We calculated that it will take us 8 days, 14 hours, and 56.7 minutes to transit from our outbox to Vladivostok. In our next video, we're going to add our transit time to departure GMT. So we'll take our departure in Zulu, we're going to add our transit time to figure out what time we're going to arrive in Vladivostok in GMT.